This is Keenan Fry and you're watching the acid drip. Sorry for the glare behind me. That's a window. I can't do anything about that. I am going to dedicate this episode to two of my friends, Abraham Rodriguez and to my buddy John Ellerby. So what I got here on YouTube is the Tycho record, which we didn't finish last time, so we're going to listen to that today. And then I have a old school recommendation from Abe. So back when I was at San Jose State with Abe, back in 2015, People Under the Stairs. And I think I listened to like 2 or 3 of their songs, but I never really like sat down and listened to them. So today we are going to listen to a bunch of their music. And then in addition to all of that, I have a recommendation from John Ellerby, which is Swervedriver. And the record is the band is called Mezcal Head, and the record is called Swervedriver. That's my mistake. So I have a recommendation from John Ellerby from Mezcal Head, Swervedriver. So this is going to be weird because John is into indie shoegaze stuff, and Abe is into hip hop and like other things. So it'll be interesting. Basically what I've done is I've reached out to a bunch of my friends and I've said, hey, give me a bunch of albums to listen to that I've never heard before. So part of the goal of this is for me to get exposed to new music, but for you also, the viewer, to get exposed. Real quick, I am not going to play any actual music while recording. I'm going to be listening to it on my headphones because I don't want to infringe on other people's copyright, and I don't want them to flag my video and then take down my video of me drawing. So what I want you to do is to look up the songs and listen to the records in your own free time. So with all that said, let's get to the drawing. I'm going to show you some things that have been going on with this. So for starters, I have this picture of a conch shell that I'm going to show you. Now, I'm pretty sure this image has some kind of copyright on it. I don't know whose it is or whatever. I found it off the internet. But basically what I did was I took this image as a reference for the Fibonacci sequence. Roughly speaking, I put the Fibonacci sequence down here in the chin strap. So what I want to say about that is that you are allowed to reference other people's work, and it isn't a copyright infringement. First and foremost, though, nobody owns the actual Fibonacci sequence. You know, nobody can say that like, oh, I own this spiral and you can't use it. So, because, you know, it's in flowers and shit, and people can't say that they own flowers. That's kind of absurd. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, what I've done is I have basically recreated the spiral, but kind of with like its own sort of curvature down here, and it's entering into the chin strap of the Pharaoh head. So that was kind of like a major development that I did off screen just because I didn't really have a lot of time to record myself draw yesterday. I've been editing videos. So my goal is to try and put out 2 videos a day for the next couple of weeks and actually like literally crank out 14 videos a week. This whole crisis has, as terrible as it sounds, has been exceptionally benevolent to me. I have a huge amount of time on my hands, and I'm incredibly grateful for that time because it's giving me the ability to complete a bunch of projects. Yes, I know that it's been caused by this crisis. The fact that I have this free time is because, you know, there's a crisis and people are dying. I'm very aware of that. So, like, I'm not saying that, you know, this crisis is a good thing, but what I am trying to do is to make light of a dark situation. So with all that nonsense and introduction out of the way, we're going to just jump into the drawing. I am going to start off with the Tycho record. We're going to finish this up. After this, I think I'm going to jump into Swervedriver because that's John's album, and I promised him I would listen to that, and then I'll jump into some People Under the Stairs. So Fuck, I just fucked up those lines. I gotta move this around and be more patient, but this whole area I just screwed up. This isn't the final draft. This is second to last draft, but that's really disappointing. That's why I do so many drafts. It warms my hand up. This is definitely the most technical part of the whole drawing. Gotta just keep working at it. You know, I'm really digging this album. The previous track had a bunch of tambourine in it. I really dig that. This record's pretty good. Gotta stretch my hand. It just sucks right now. This record's pretty interesting. I really like the lo-fi sound. One of the things I like about indie is it makes you feel like you can make a record. A lot of the times I hate heavy metal because it's so tightly produced. Like, bands like Lamb of God sometimes drive me nuts because even though I love them, they're like super produced. Like, especially on records like Sacrament. Whoa, this song... Harry and Maggie, this right here, this song, reminds me of My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. Yeah, this is a record. I might listen to that after People. God, that guitar fuzz sounds like a balloon losing air. It's fucking awesome. It's really funny. That sound used to be considered like a bad sound, and now like people pay like $400 for a Zevix fuzz factory to like be able to purposely make those fuzz sounds. Granted, I'm probably going to be one of those people because I like the Zevix fuzz factory and I would totally buy it. But that just kind of only proves my point. Oh, fuck, I just fucked up that line. There's so many lines that I'm screwing up right now. This is exactly what I mean when I say the people's genre. This just really sounds super lo-fi and I dig it. The vocals are like super clean, but like the guitar is just very jangly and I dig it. This is a really awesome record. John, thank you for recommending this to me. This is Swervedriver Mezcal Head remastered. Yeah, this is a good record. Hey, so I'm just going to turn on the webcam for a second and then I'm going to turn it off because it's going to crash the computer. So after totally botching this section right here, I took a break for about 2 hours and now I am back at it again. So real quick, I just wanted to let you know, this actually isn't the last draft. I know I mentioned that previously, but I want to kind of elaborate. I am going to go through this one more time on Arches paper. So I have some really high quality Arches paper from Arches, France. Arches is a city in France, much like how Champagne has to be from Champagne, France. Arches paper literally has to be from the Arches factory in France. It's the second oldest paper mill in the history of Europe after the Gutenberg press. And it's the oldest still operating paper mill, from what I understand, the Arches paper mill. Some things that are really nice about Arches paper, they use hot press cotton. And the reason why I emphasize the use of hot press cotton is because the quality is different from cold press. And so we will look at some cold press and some hot press when it comes time to transfer this onto the final sheet. And I will kind of point out the differences. But the very, very quick overview is that cold press has a texture and it isn't sheer. So to give you an idea, this is very sheer. This paper right here, it's very, very sheer. There's nothing, there's really no texture. And the reason why that is optimal is because if there's texture, obviously as you're drawing with your, fine point micron, you're going to be going over bumps and stuff, and that's going to kind of distract from the line quality and make it hard to get really consistent lines. That being said, I was drawing like shit earlier, so even if I am doing it on hot press paper, I'll probably still screw this up. I'll find a way to screw up my own artwork. Now that's just me being slightly pessimistic. I think I can get this done right. I just have to take breaks and take my time with it. That being said, it is really an exhaustive process of drawing and then transferring and drawing and then transferring. I will literally have to redraw this entire thing in pencil on the final sheet of paper and then re-ink everything on the final sheet. And then after that is done, I will start painting it. And then as I'm painting it, I will also have to re-ink some of those lines afterwards because, that's kind of what happens. You paint it, you go over the lines a little bit, things happen, you gotta do it again. So by no means is this easy, and by no means is this the correct or only way of doing it, but it is the way by which I do this. So with all of that out of the way, I am going to dive back into this. I'm going to turn off the webcam up top so that my computer processing power doesn't get totally sucked up by this, and we're going to just get straight into it again. This really reminds me of my Bloody Valentine. But there's this really nice saxophone in the background, which is something my Bloody Valentine never would have done. I love this though. This is really nice. Man, that song really hit me. That was a really good song. This is an exceptional album. Swervedriver, that was fundamentally exceptional. All right, we're going to listen to some People Under the Stairs. Thank you, John, for Swervedriver. That was phenomenal. Let's listen to some People Under the Stairs. Acid Raindrops. This is recommended by Abe Rodriguez, my dude. Remember the days working on the daily, going to publish at 3 a.m. And see, even up until the last draft. I'm still, working a few things out. Like right here, I'm still doing this. Like that. See, I'm still blocking things out with the 2B. So I'm gonna mess around with this section in pencil, and then I'll get back to inking. Yeah, this is a good record. People Under the Stairs. That bass line's pretty good. There's a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes in this. Oh my god! Oh. Definitely my favorite track was Acid Raindrops. Some of this stuff I can't relate to, but some of it I can. And the stuff that I can relate to I like. The stuff that I can't relate to I still enjoy. So I think it wasn't a bad record overall. Thought it was pretty cool actually. I'm gonna take a break for a second. This is just wiping me out mentally. Oh, God. I might not finish it actually today. I think there's just, like if I move the camera and kind of like reorient it, like there's so much in here, I just don't want to do it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it. I think I have to call it. I've already been doing this for more than 3 hours anymore, and I'm going to be mentally numb. It's better to take my time with it. Besides, I've been fucking up a lot, and I'm only going to get more inconsistent as I go. I'd rather work at this for like 3 hours a day and do it very consistently than try to push to do 5 and then fuck it up so much. So I think that's kind of just it for now. Some things to think about. I've redesigned these little sections. Shit, you can't see. These little sections here throughout. I redid those and I created a little filler thing. So you could see as I was working, I was still using the 2B. This thing is one of my most important tools. It's almost like a crayon because it's so soft and the material is so fluid. But this piece of lead is probably the most forgiving tool in my arsenal. And I'm so grateful that I have it because it allows me to move away from thinking about getting like really precise and like individualized lines and into just focusing on the flow and feeling of the lines. And it allows me to, it really gives a lot. It reminds me a lot of working with charcoal, where when you're working with charcoal, they say it gives a lot because it's such a broad material and it leaves so much of itself on the paper that it always ends up giving you more. And then through the process of reduction, you can use your gum eraser to pull off layers of the charcoal. So in a sense, like charcoal, it's probably the most giving medium out of all of them. And that's why they recommend when you learn figure drawing to start with charcoal, because it's just so forgiving when you're starting out. And working in pencil is so painful. It's so painful. I failed my my final project when I was in art class at the College of San Mateo, the JC. I failed that because I did my final project in pencil. And instead of acknowledging how much harder it is to work with the graphite medium, the teacher just gave me a flat F, which really sucked. But it was a good lesson. I learned a lot about figure drawing. But he passed a bunch of people who did really like kind of sloppy drawings in charcoal, but they completed their drawing. But they did like really sloppy work, but it was complete. And they only did it in like 3 hours, where I spent like 18 hours across 3 days just like killing myself to do it. And I didn't even complete it, and so I still failed. And that's the nature of graphite, is that graphite fights you, and graphite will try to defeat you. And the only way to beat graphite is to do small amounts over multiple sessions. If you try to cram in multiple sessions in one day like I did today, you start to really screw up after you've been drawing for an hour, because graphite is so physically exhausting to use. What ends up happening is your hand starts to subconsciously tense up, and then when your hand twitches, which it normally happens, and so when you're training yourself to draw, you're training yourself to control the twitch in your hand, and you're trying to steady it. You can't actually get rid of the twitch in your hand. That always occurs, but you're trying to minimize the twitch and turn it into a micro twitch, where it's really small and not spastic and jerky, but just very small and minute. And in the aggregate, when you step back, you won't see the twitch. But if you zoom in very closely, you will see it, and you'll see the mistakes. So the goal with training yourself with graphite is to steady your hand so that that twitch is minimalized, and that's how your hand becomes more confident. The problem, though, is that once you've been playing, or not playing, but once you've been drawing for about an hour, your endurance has significantly decreased, and your control exponentially weakens. And I really find it's at like the 1 hour threshold. It really takes a long time to develop endurance to go longer than that. And you basically have to practice like every day for hours on end to build your drawing endurance up to the point where you can do like a 4 hour session. But that takes like, 5 years of practice to develop. You can't learn to do that in 6 months. If you try to, you'll destroy the tendons in your arms, because you'll be so aggressively overworking them, they'll flare up, which is what happened to me when I was a kid and I was going to San Jose State and I was overly practicing guitar. I just destroyed my arms. So with graphite, it's really brutal, but with charcoal, you can probably go 3 times as long. You can go 3 times as long with the charcoal because it's not as finite and finessed. And I think you could probably go twice as long with the 2B. I think with the 2B, I could probably go about 2 hours straight at it, maybe a little bit more. and do a good job and feel like I still have control over myself. And about 3 hours with charcoal, which just shows you how exhausting by comparison graphite is and working in that medium. So I want to do more, and like mentally, my mental focus is strong enough for me to want to do more, but my physical endurance isn't there. And just because like I can mentally focus doesn't mean I physically can focus. And I think another layer of mental discipline is knowing when you've reached that physical limit and saying like, you know, I want to do more, but I need to stop, because if I try and do any more, I'm just going to burn myself out and this is going to suck, because the quality is going to decrease significantly and it's not going to look the way I want it to. And I've made a shitload of mistakes in this as it is today. So when I come back at this tomorrow, I want to close out this corner up here, and I want to close out this section up in here. And then I want to start to kind of like close in this way, like go in from the sides into the center eventually. But I'm still a ways off from that. And that's the thing. Once this draft is done, I then have to redraw the whole frickin' thing and do the whole thing in even higher quality and with higher level of self-control on the more expensive and you know, valuable paper, and that's going to be even harder than this, because you know, I'm going to be doing ink on paper on the nice stuff. And if I mess up there, that's it. I have to work with, you know, whatever I put down. So it's one of those things where when I start working on this for the final draft, I'm really going to have to be confident in what it is I'm doing, like in all of my decisions and in the entire process. And I know a few things are going to get redesigned going into that final draft, because there's some new things that I've added to this, and you know, I don't know how I feel about those things exactly, and I have to kind of sit here and really iron it out and figure out, you know, is this the way I want it to look? Is this, you know, good for the final product? And I'm not sure about that. I just thought of something I want to do. Okay, you see this spot right here? I want to add a flower here to that accent. I just thought of that right now. I saw that and I thought, you know, there's got to be something here to kind of fill that space a little bit more. But anyway, I'm past my limit. I need to take a break. Now what I'm doing is I'm not really drawing per se, like, and I am drafting, but I'm not doing the finite stuff. I'm kind of just drafting some additional ideas. There we go. Something like that. Just sang a Christmas song. Just sang Joy to the World. I'm losing my mind. I'm singing Christmas songs now. So yeah, I don't know. I'm at the point though where I need to take a break. I'm mentally fried, and I have other work to do after this. I have to do other work, so I have to switch gears. So yeah, it's time to stop. Thanks for watching. I'm Keenan Fry. This is the Acid Drip. I really appreciate you guys sticking around the whole time, and I will see you tomorrow with some more drawing.